Jayo Kunja Bihari. Jashodanandana Jayo Braja Jana Ranjana Jashodanandana Jayo Braja Jana Ranjana Jamuna Tiravanachari Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Jamuna Tiravanachari Jayo Kunja Bihari Jamuna Tiravanachari Jayo Kunja Bihari Jaya Jamuna Tiravanachari Jayo Kunja Bihari Jayo Radha Madhava Jayo Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare
is one of the 5 primary aspects of devotional life. That he gives 64 items of devotional service that he has taken from his brother's work, the Hari Bhakti Vilas, which is delineating all the aspects of devotional service. So then, in this, then he is taken these as these are principal, these are main. So these main points then of this, then after establishing the primary elements so that one is established in devotional service, like accepting a spiritual master, following a Ekadasi, like this, then he gives 44 items. In these 44 items, then the most important is chanting Hare Krishna, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, associating with devotees, worshipping the deity, and living in the holy Dham. But of these 44, basically we see practically all of them are in relationship to the worship of the deity. So basically what we're dealing with here, so then we can see is that Rupa Goswami puts a lot of importance on deity worship. It's one of the main, so we're chanting, we're associating with devotees, we're hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, the past name, form, qualities, pastimes of the Lord, and we're worshiping the Lord. And the place where we're worshiping naturally is in the Lord's place, that you have the Dham. So, it's not something to be neglected. It is, sometimes it'll be said, okay, it's for the neophytes, but then how do we classify ourselves? So if you're, as you were, bold enough or fearless enough to move forward in the class, so that others won't, get crowded in the back. So you're bold enough to raise your hand and say, yes, I am a Madhyamadikari, and therefore I do not need deity worship. Oh, there's one. See, he's raising his hand there. Okay, very good. We have one here. Okay, very nice. Does this make some sense? So the idea is that basically as long as the conditioning is strong, then deity worship becomes very useful for us. Why? Srila Prabhupada explains that the Pancharatra then creates regulation. This regulation then allows us to be absorbed properly in hearing and chanting about the Lord. Otherwise we get distracted. So it's the most, of the processes that use rules and regulations, the Pancharatra then is the most directly connected to the Lord. All aspects of the Pancharatra are connected, directly connected, or something that is important so that you can be directly connected. Like taking a bath isn't specifically directly connected, but because you take a bath, then you can worship the deity. Does that make sense? So it'll be either direct activities in connection with Vishnu, or those activities that give facility for direct service to Vishnu. Does that make sense? So it's a very important process. It is gleaned from the Vedic literatures. The Vedas then give so many aspects of human life, but it covers everything for all varieties of people. Many, many people, they will be interested in the Vedic lifestyle because of its piety, because of its effectiveness, because of its ability to actually answer questions and connect your lifestyle with, authority, right? But it also, those who are materialistic may also find this very nice. We always have to remember is that the demons, they follow the Vedas also, right? Despite whatever it is, modern academic theory, Hiranyakashipu wore a dhoti. He didn't wear something else. He found that this is the nicest, most comfortable. If you're going to enjoy the material world, then you might as well enjoy it nicely. Therefore, the Vedic culture will give that a facility. Does that make sense? So all the demons, the big demons, I mean the people that live out in the forest that are all hairy and have their stomach in the middle of their, their mouth in the middle of their stomach and big long arms and hairy, those ones may not follow so strictly. But any of the ones that we see that have civilization, the ones like Bali Maharaj and all those, the Daityas, the Danavas, they all follow the Vedic culture, because we have to remember most of the big ones, their grandfather, great-grandfather is Lord Brahma. Right? Then after that, then so many, come down. But so they understand that outside the Vedas, then there's no really good way to make the material energy respond. Right? Does that make sense? Just like if you want to train a horse or deal with a horse, the best way is by the natural laws that govern the horse. Right? The horse will be happy, you'll get done what you want to get done. You don't follow those laws in connection with the horse, you won't get anywhere, you'll be frustrated. All right? So God's laws apply to the material energy. It's His material energy, so His natural laws are what's going to make it work nicely. Does that make sense? Like that. Because we should be very careful about thinking that the present society, the present age, let's say the present day, the contemporary environment actually is getting a lot out of the material energy. Think about it. What are you getting? Right? You get fruits and vegetables that don't really have any taste. You don't have much air to breathe. Like that. Water you have to buy. Like that. Does that make sense? Clothes, a lot of times it's synthetic. If it is, it's coming from somewhere else. How great is it? After 6 months it goes out of fashion, so it couldn't have been that great in the first place. You know what I'm saying? So what are they getting? People are getting divorced. That means even their natural relationships, even their sense gratification isn't happening. Right? People are down at the pubs dying for some sense gratification. And are they getting it? Basically not. In the movies, yes. But in real life, good chance not. So in reality, what is it that this modern society is giving you that's so superior to the Vedic? Therefore, we're willing to stand on it and say, this Vedic, doesn't apply nowadays. This Vedic doesn't have any real meaning, because the modern contemporary society is really, giving us the full, real, wholesome life that we're all looking for, right? Isn't it? That's what Shikshastakam says, that nectar for which you are always anxious, that is being delivered by the modern society. Yes or no? In reality, no. Therefore, we see even the demons, they follow the Vedic culture. So then how intelligent does that leave someone who doesn't? Right? That means they're ignorant. And then what position does it put someone in who knows about the Vedic culture and rejects it and says the modern is better? So that's even worse than ignorant. That's more foolish than the demons. Does this make sense? We're just, talking reality here, right? Nowadays, truth is, the thing, so little straight talk then. Right? Does this make sense? So, but as we see is that it's very broad, right? So the devotees can take part in it, the demons can take part in it, and then anything in between. That's how broad the Vedic culture is. Right? The modern is, you can only be modern and take part in it. You can't maintain traditions, you can't maintain any of those things. As soon as you want to take it up, you have to give those things up, right? Your mom's nice cooking, you have to give up if you want to go down and, eat at McDonald's. Does that make sense? Some nice tradition, the way it clothes, the way people interact, you have to give that all up. So it's not actually very broad, it's actually quite narrow. Right? It's very interesting. It used to be that you'd go around the world and you'd actually notice differences in peoples and cultures and all that. And this last year I went around, there's hardly any difference. I went to Australia and they're just like Americans. You come to America, they're like Americans. It's kind of like, it's not surprising, but whatever, true. Right? So it's interesting is that it's just becoming very, ordinary, very blasé. So the point is then this Vedic culture is very broad. So as devotees, we're not actually interested in all the aspects, right? Meaning we're not interested in the mentalities that give rise to the karma kanda, the jnana kanda, all these different things. Therefore, we're only interested in what actually of the Vedic culture is in connection with Krishna, right? So that's your Daiva Varnashram. So the rituals of that, or the rules of that apply, that's called the Pancharatra. The Pancharatra then takes from the Vedic literatures all the different rules and regulations that govern human society. And those aspects which are directly connected to Lord Vishnu, those are pulled, right? Because otherwise, where does Pancharatra get its authority? It has to be based on Veda, right? So Smriti, right, has to be based on Shruti, right? So the Veda is the authority of the Pancharatra, but it is the essence of it. In other words, what actually connects to Lord Vishnu, right? With the idea is since worshipping Lord Vishnu is your main point, then by following the rules of the Pancharatra, one will come to the platform, the Bhagavat platform, right? So we see this connection here between, so there's a direct connection between the Bhagavat, Pancharatra, and Vedic. In this, then, the Vedic is the reflection of this, what is the activities of the spiritual world. But because it's in the spiritual world, everybody is using that culture to serve Krishna. But in the material world, people aren't necessarily so inclined to serve Krishna. Then, with that, then since people have to stay in this material world, right? You don't want them to get upset and start to be destructive. Then you keep them busy by engaging them in that spiritual culture, but they're getting their material needs, right? Does that make sense? So they don't understand that it's actually a spiritual culture. Therefore, the result that they get from it is not spiritual. Does that make sense? Right? You perform an activity not for Krishna, you don't get a spiritual result. You perform the exact same activity for Krishna, you get a spiritual result. Does that make sense? Right? So, therefore, then you have all these various aspects are there. Right? So then, the Pancharatra, then in keeping in line with the spiritual culture, then pulls from this actual reflection of the spiritual culture, which things are obviously going to be identified by the living entity, the conditioned living entity, as spiritual. Does that make sense? And the core of that is worshiping of the Lord, means, in other words, serving the Lord through hearing, chanting, remembering, the Lord in His pastimes. Does that make sense? That's your Pancharatra. So, yeah. So this Pancharatra, its origin then, means we've explained that's what it is. So its origin is that when Lord Brahma, after he had heard all the Vedas and heard all the, instructions by Krishna, then you had, before the creation, then these two demons, Madhu and Kaitava, right? Or Krishna is known as Madhusudan, who killed the Madhu demon. So this Madhu and Kaitava, then they were these special kind of demons that they were. Hare Krishna. They were special demons in that they could. Means most demons can only just take your stuff, right? But these guys were, because it's before creation, so they're a bit more subtle, so they could actually steal things from your mind, right? So then they accessed Lord Brahma's mind, stole the Vedas, right? And then ran off with them. So Krishna, after, killing them, then came back. So Lord Brahma then asked that you taught me the Vedas, but they've been taken. So you please teach them to me again. But since it takes time to do that, and at any moment we may die, you please teach me the essence first. Then after that, the rest of the Veda. So then in 5 nights, and then Krishna spoke the essence of the Veda to Lord Brahma. So that's called the Pancha Ratra, right? The 5 nights. So this then is the essence of the Vedas. We can see is that because it's connecting, in other words, what is connected to Krishna, that is important. What is not connected to Krishna is not important. So the important aspect is how to connect it to Krishna. So actual Krishna consciousness is learning how to connect everything to Krishna. Right? That makes everything work. So therefore, it's whatever it is that you can connect, that's important. So the point is that it's connected to Krishna. Right? Not whether it's Vedic or whether it's modern or whether it's, this or that. No, it's whether it's connected to Krishna or not. Right? That's the essence. Right? Does that make sense? So then, having spoken all that, then this is then given to Narad, and then Narad then has given it to us. Therefore, it is also known as the Narada Pancharatra. Right? It means there is a Pancharatra called Narada Pancharatra, but technically all the 108 Pancharatras can also be called Narada because they're coming from him. He's the one who has given them to everyone else. So then, yeah. So now, in this is then now. Okay, is there any questions on this? Yes.
108 Narada Pancharatras.
There's 108 Pancharatras, but because they're given by Narada, you can say Pancharatra is coming from Narada. It's not that there are 108 Narada Pancharatras. There's one called Narada Pancharatra. Then you have Ahirbudnyaya, you have Hayashirsha, like this, Padma, there's so many of them, like that.
They all have different contents?
They all have basically the same contents, but sometimes their emphasis or the how much, what aspect of the ritual is there prominent, that's different. Because basically you're dealing with something unlimited. How to worship the Lord is unlimited. So there's main categories. It's just like you offer bhoga to the deity. Now what kind of bhoga you can offer is basically unlimited. Does that make sense? Like that. So that would be your differences. Anything else?
Was the Pancharatra related as connection with the Panchatriki?
Panchatriki, it's the same thing. It's just a different word. America, American, like that. The same kind of thing.
The rest of the 108, so one was Narada, and the 107 came from Brahma? Or?
No, we said that Brahma gave the knowledge of Pancharatra to Narad Muni. Narad Muni gave it to everybody else. Therefore, Pancharatra is attributed to Narad Muni. So whichever one it was, still its origin will be Narad Muni. Okay? Anything else? Balami Mash? No? Nothing. Okay. So then, so basically speaking now in application in our life, right, is the Bhagavat platform is the natural platform of the living entity to serve the Lord. Right? Because the Bhagavat means you're worshiping Bhagavan, and due to your natural inherent affection for Krishna, then you are performing your devotional activities. When we come into the material world, then the conditioned state arises. So even though inherently we're servants of Krishna, but that gets covered. And so what we're dealing with is the conditioned nature instead of our constitutional nature. Right? So this conditioned nature then requires to be engaged properly, to be connected. So then the Pancharatra gives a regulation by which the conditioned soul can be engaged in the Bhagavat activities, but without getting deviated. Does that make sense? So in other words, Pancharatra is Bhagavat, but applied through rules. Does that make sense? So therefore your sadhana comes up, because sadhana means practice. We're not on the platform of prema, so therefore we require practice to get to that. Does that make sense? Like that. Yeah, so then that basically then covers, the engagement of the devotee in general. If we look at it, Pancharatra, we may not think about it. Generally we think Pancharatra means the deity worship, but let me just explain how the Pancharatra opens when it deals with the main topics. So first one will be, you get up in the morning, chant the Lord's name. When you wake up, you just say Hare Krishna or Krishna Krishna, something like that. Offer obeisances to the spiritual master. Then you get up, go to the bathroom, clean yourself, brush your teeth, clean your tongue, take a bath. Then you put on your, after having a bath, you've dried yourself properly, you put on your tilak, you're wearing neck beads. Then you'll dress yourself in appropriate attire, wearing the different symbols of Vaishnavas, chant the Gayatri mantra, clean the place where you stay, go to the temple, ring the bell, come in, chant the deity's name, offer obeisances. Then attend Mangalartik, worship the deity is performed, worship the spiritual master is performed, you must hear Srimad Bhagavatam, you must chant Hare Krishna, you'll worship Tulsi, you'll take care of any guests that come, you'll take prasad. Then after that, you'll do various services for the deity. You'll study and practice those studies, or whatever else is your particular service. Does this sound familiar? Right. So that means your whole lifestyle, that you call your devotee lifestyle, is Pancharatra. But its focus is Bhagavat, chanting Hare Krishna. So because its focus is that, we just think we just chant Hare Krishna. So it might even be completely unknown that your whole lifestyle is actually Pancharatric. Right? Because the Pancharatric is Bhagavat in giving it a form that the conditioned soul can relate to. Right? Means in the spiritual world, first thing when they wake up in the morning, they just think of Krishna. Right? Then they go and take their bath and everything very quickly so they can go see Krishna. Does that make sense? It's the same lifestyle. It's just formulated because there it is, it's spontaneous. We don't have that spontaneous attraction. Right? Does that make sense? So therefore, the rules are given to create that for us. So we're technically leading the same lifestyle as those in the spiritual world. Right? And then we'll on top of that, not understanding this, then make comments like, are you interested in spiritual culture or Vedic? As if there's a difference. Does that make sense? So that's why it's important also to study these books and everything like that. Like this Pancharatra Pradeep was written, I don't know how many years ago, 15 years ago, or like that. Basically speaking, there's hardly a handful of devotees who have ever actually read it. Like that. It's sitting on every shelf in every pujari room in the movement, but very few people actually look at it. So, or 11th canto, it also explains, but generally 11th canto is not a popular canto either. So, does this make sense? So actually, the Pancharatric lifestyle is to regulate so that the actual effect of the Bhagavat can take place. Right? You will be chanting. You will do all these things. Because otherwise, Bhagavat is just, you'd always be absorbed anyway. Right? You don't have to tell, the gopis to chant Krishna's name. They're not sitting around and spacing out, and then Lalita has to come and say, "Now don't forget to chant." You don't have all that stuff. It's not that, you go around to the kunjas in the morning and one or two gopis have to go around with a bucket of water to wake up the other gopis because they're still sleeping when it's time to, get ready for Radha Krishna's Mangalarti. It doesn't happen. Right? So therefore, you don't have to have rules in place because they do it naturally. But the conditioned soul, except for trying to be God, doesn't do anything naturally. Right? So therefore you have to put into place a process that will create that for them, that will actually create their good fortune. Does that make sense? Otherwise, we'd be watching movies at, 6 in the morning. That's, of course, if you're up. But instead, by Pancharatra, we got to chant japa in the morning, and then sometime when, a different time when we're not Bhagavatam class and that, then if you want to get into your crazy stuff, then it happens at that time. Does that make sense? Right? So even the devotee who doesn't consider himself very strict, still, his life is still somewhat regulated by the Pancharatra. So if they do get some spiritual benefit, they'll get the most they can for how much endeavor they're putting in. Does that make sense? Okay. So is that clear how the Pancharatra actually applies to us? It means every last devotee. Then there's the specifics that somebody is technically worshiping the deity with the rituals. Right? So that's part of the actual Pancharatric process. Does that make sense? The actual biggest part of the Pancharatra is the Jnana section, which establishes how Krishna in the spiritual world has come and has incarnated as the deity or the archa in the material world. Right? That's the main. Then the ritual is just how you'll worship him now. Right? Then there'll be a section on festivals, how to perform festivals, how to install the deities, and then what is the lifestyle of someone who is worshiping the deity. Right? Is that right? And so, just as in the spiritual world, they're always with the Lord. They see the Lord directly. So the same opportunity is given to the living entities in the material world. That the Lord is here, you can see him. You can interact, you can serve. Does that make sense? So it's very much part of our life. It's a very important thing. It's not just rituals. Understanding just rituals, that is misunderstanding what is religion. Religion means religion will have a body of laws, but why are those laws there? Right? It's not there that you have a body of laws that by following these laws or these rituals, then you'll get a pious result, means you'll get good money, good family, good wealth, good knowledge, good all these different things. Materialists use it like that. That's called karmakanda. Right? Or the jnanis use it to free themselves from the material world. But the Vedic purpose of all this form is to reestablish your relationship with Krishna, to express your affection for Krishna. Does this make sense? Right? So this may not be what you normally would consider, discussions on deity worship. Right? You expect us to get right into the Achman or something like that. That will come. But the point is, if you don't understand it's already part of your lifestyle, then you think, well, I have my life, then there's, the deity worship. No, the deity worship is your lifestyle. Now it's just a matter of whether you are specifically worshiping the deity through the rituals or you're not. Right? Another aspect of Pancharatra that's not well known is that the one who worships the deity and one who sees that worship get exactly the same benefit. Right? Now that's equal opportunity. This is the real meaning of equal opportunity, not the contemporary model. Does that make sense? So you have one pujari doing Mangal Artik, everyone else watches. They all get exactly the same benefit. Right? One may think, well, no, unless I'm there doing it myself. But that's a mundane concept. It's not a spiritual concept. Therefore, all this sentiment that everybody's got to get in there with all their hands and feet, then only then they get the benefit. That's a modern, mundane concept. If I don't do it myself, I don't get anything. All right? And where does it come from? Lack of trust. If we trust, we don't have a problem. We lack of trust, therefore I have to do it myself. So it's not that it manifests just in the deity worship, it manifests in management also. Why? There's got to be a committee. Why? Because then I can be on the committee, because I don't want anybody else controlling my life. You understand? It's all connected. Right? It's all part of the modern think. I do it myself, I get the benefit. I don't do it myself, I don't get the benefit. Now let us look at the spiritual realm. Krishna, it's not that we directly are going to be the one interacting directly with Krishna. Right? The point is Krishna already has the devotees that directly interact with him. We assist those devotees. Right? Because Krishna says one who says he's my devotee is not. So right there, that blows the whole modern concept that I got to be right there in the front and got to do it myself. Because he says that mentality isn't even counted as devotional. You know what I'm saying? Great sentiment, but in reality, it's not the principle. I am servant of the servant. So if the pujari is there, I want to take advantage of that. How do I assist the pujari? That's the real process, not, push the pujari over and let me do it now. Right? Otherwise, here, Mother Jashoda is coming and, okay, you got your chance to greet Krishna now, out of the way, lady, now it's my turn. Is that how it works? No, in that picture, she's the one that's greeting Krishna. The gopis are in the back, they got their things to assist her, the cowherd boys are there on Krishna's side. But what's the pastime? It's Mother Jashoda and Krishna. You understand? Now the point is what they feel and what they get, by seeing that, you get the same thing. In fact, you get more. Does that make sense? Right? Because Mother Jashoda is happy seeing Krishna. Right? But the devotees are happy seeing that Mother Jashoda is happy seeing Krishna. So they have her happiness plus their happiness of seeing it. Does this make sense? So this is why the process works. If somebody's doing something, you see it being done, you get the benefit. That means, technically speaking, you could have an abhishek where one person did the whole abhishek, everyone else sat nicely without killing each other and watched it. You'd all get the same spiritual benefit. Right? Plus, it's pleasant, it's nice, the kirtan goes on, everybody can see, isn't it? Cultured, refined, effective. But what's our alternative? Everybody's got to be up there. No one can see anything. The deity doesn't really get a nice worship because most of those people who come up wouldn't have any idea how to pour this stuff on Krishna's head. No one else can see, no one's inspired, so the kirtan, a few devotees are doing some nice kirtan like that, but they're just absorbing the kirtan because they can't really watch the thing because they can't see anyway, because there's a million people trying to bathe the deity. So now, comparing these two, which one is actually more effective? Which one gives people inspiration to come? If you can sit down there for a few hours, watch some nice program, take part, experience the environment, isn't that better than you get in there and get your 30 seconds and after that the rest of it's a zoo? Is that what's going to inspire you to come at midnight? Is that I get to go in there and fight my way into the zoo and then get to do something for Krishna? Right? Think about it. So this is the Pancharatra. And what much of the time goes on in the present day, that has nothing to do with Pancharatra. That's just modern society, modern culture. But due to pride, you can't say that. So therefore, you have to say, well, we're being practical, we're being this, we're being that, blah, 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 blah. But in reality, it's a cultural vacuum, and that's why nobody comes around. Does that make sense? It means you want to see a brawl, well, we'll watch a rugby match or something, or watch, world championship, boxing or something. If we want to see something at least a little more exciting, Does that make sense? So this is the whole point, is the Pancharatra is designed that everyone will benefit. Why? Because it's all connected to Krishna. That's the method. In the spiritual world, you have thousands of devotees. What was the reason, if we think about it, in the Krishna book, the rasa dance? The rasa dance started and then it stopped. Why did it stop? And then later again, what made it start again? Very important. You're talking about 16,108 main gopis. So these are the ones that are mentioned. So that would indicate that there would be many more than that. Does that make sense? Some say millions. And so of that, 16,108 we'll say is prominent. Right? Does that make sense? So you're dealing with a lot of gopis here. So these gopis are all there, and they're all very qualified, and they're there with Krishna. And these are the ones that were qualified, so when Krishna blew his flute, they arrived at the scene. They weren't held back because of various, material considerations. Right? So we're talking about the ones that went. Right? So these are the qualified ones. But when they get there, then each one of them is thinking, I'm the most fortunate girl. Now that's a problem. Right? So how is this going to work? How is the cooperation going to work? Because if girl thinks she's the center, then how it's going to function? It's not. Right? Isn't it? You get a bunch of ladies together, what's the first thing you have to work out? The pecking order. Right? Once that's worked out, it's peaceful. You don't work it out, it's war. Right? So, and we're talking about a handful. You have 2, 3, 5, 6, 8, 10. We're talking here about thousands. Okay? So, because each one of them thinks, I'm the most qualified, then Krishna disappeared. Having disappeared, then in that separation, then they became, more and more attached to Krishna. Then, having been more and more attached to Krishna, then at some point they wander around looking for Krishna. And in their wandering around, they see Krishna's wandered off with someone else. So right there, one, that'll create jealousy, but underlying, then that means he left all of us for this one. Right? So that means that one is special. But the difficulty will come is there'll still be jealousy because you're dealing with girls. Right? Now, then when those gopis come upon Radha and Krishna, Krishna immediately disappears, so they don't even see Krishna. So that moment when Krishna disappears, then Srimati Radharani is going to feel separation. So now they've just gone through a whole chapter of separation and all the amazing things that happen due to their separation. So they already know how much they're affected by their feelings of separation for Krishna, right? So now when they come upon Srimati Radharani and her separation from Krishna, it's so much greater than theirs that it's obvious to them, this person is a much greater devotee than me. Does that make sense? Having understood that, then Krishna comes back. Right? And then after the natural preliminaries and all that, then he starts the rasa dance. Okay? So now, when you see a picture of the rasa dance, what does it look like? It's just a big ring? Or is it a ring and somebody's in the middle of that ring? So who's in the middle? Krishna, just alone? Radha and Krishna, right? And then who's around the outside? All the other gopis with Krishna. And Krishna with the other, but the point is Radha and Krishna are in the middle because they'll perform their dancing, but Krishna wants to see all the others, but he wants to watch it with Radharani. So that means they all have to accept that she is the supreme of the gopis. And that they are then following in her footsteps, or assisting. Does that make sense? So does this shed any light on these Pancharatric principle of you can just by seeing you get the same benefit? Because the point is if you're not assisting, then you're not actually part of the process. Does that make sense? A living entity is always an instrument, like that. So I give one other explanation. This would be grammatical, because this is an educated country, like that. I just heard the charts. America is the 24th in the world countries as far as education goes. That means there's another 23 countries that are more educated than this country, like that. Used to be America was in the top 3, but somehow or another times have changed. So this is according to grammar, that you have a subject, which is a noun, and that will be applied, connected to the object, which is also a noun, right? And that connection is through the verb, right? Means you have someone performing an activity that's directed towards another person, right? So that activity is the verb. So then you have what's called the instrumental case. So the instrumental case is those nouns which assist in the application of the verb. Does that make sense? So they never become the subject or the one who's performing the activity. And they're not the object or who the activity is being performed towards. Right? And then you have, besides that, the result, which is the dative. But that verb being applied gets a result. And that's even separate from the subject and object. Right? And this is, if you remember in the Nectar Devotion, it says Krishna is the supreme subject, Radharani is the supreme object. This is a grammatical explanation. Like that. So that means the jivas are always instrument. They never become the subject or the object. So they're always assisting. That's their eternal position, their eternal nature. Does that make sense? So also, therefore, the principle is that you have people, and there's a whole hierarchy how it works. Does this make sense? So from, many angles then, we presented that the idea is you are assisting. That is the devotional process. The more it is we don't assist, the more it is we don't see the seniority or have respect for seniors or assist others, that we have to do it ourselves. Everybody is equal. Then the farther away you go from the devotional process. Therefore, you find very little happens in the community, because actually the method that they use is not devotional. Does that make sense? Yes, no? May not be very tasty, this discussion, but the idea is that if you don't know what's going on, then why go on in ignorance, right? You know what's going on, you can do something. You don't know what's going on, then you may be doing the wrong thing and think it's the right thing, but it's not getting any better. Right? The community, even though now it's community-centered, not temple-centered, it's not getting any better, the community. It's not pulling together more. Why? Because the modern methods won't work. You have to use these Bhagavat Pancharatric Vedic methods, and they're consistent with devotional service, because they're created by Krishna. Does that make sense? Right? So, with that then, that means, are there any questions on this? Yes.
I'm just wondering about this concept. How does consciousness relate to everyone getting the same benefit? So, for instance,
consciousness.
The consciousness of people.
Oh, how does the consciousness go? The point is you'll get according to your consciousness.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? Srila Prabhupada is here taking darshan of the deity, and you have one of his disciples offering the arti, so it doesn't stop him seeing Krishna according to his platform of realization.
Okay.
But the point is it's a process. You know what I'm saying? That's the whole thing, is that there are formulas, and Krishna likes it this way. You know what I'm saying? Like here, Krishna and Mother just showed him meat. Then what are they doing with their hands? You know, they could be doing, high five, or sticking out their hand, no, doing the, and all that kind of stuff. They could be doing so many things, but they're not. This is what they do. Does that make sense? So the point is there's a natural form. And because we don't know the form, therefore it's given to us in the form of regulation. So it is only a medium. Therefore, we can put emphasis on it that you have to follow it. At the same time, we can say that's not actually the important point. The important point is the consciousness. If you can affect the consciousness without it, great. But since that's not common, right? Haridas Thakur, he just started chanting Hare Krishna, and he chants 3 lakhs a day. So he doesn't have to bother with it. But how many are chanting, 192 rounds a day? Every day. Right? Not for 3 years while you're fired up, and then after that, bang, out there, married, got your job, got the, not that kind. Consistent. So that is the point, is that therefore a form is given so that we can engage ourselves no matter what position we're in. Does that make sense? Because the point is how it means we see a majority of people will get married. Isn't it? So if that's there, then one has to be able to connect one's life to Krishna just the same. Yeah. Does that make sense? One has to be able to connect oneself, just as much opportunity to connect oneself is there in the brahmacharya ashram. It should be there in the grihastha ashram. Right? But because you're dealing with a much more complex lifestyle, you need more knowledge. Not this modern concept is I need less knowledge because ignorance is bliss. Right? Does that make sense? So then the whole idea is that consciousness needs a form through which it must manifest, because relationship means there'll be a form. Otherwise, how do you know that you have that relationship? Right? It means the man lives together in the same house with the woman. That's the natural form of a grihastha. That's how you tell. It's like, the man's in the house, and then, you hear some sounds in the kitchen, hey, honey, can you get me this? Then, you take it that, well, it must be, his wife, otherwise it's, a very unique girlfriend. You know what I'm saying? So then, it's just natural forms are there. Does that make sense? Like that. So that's why the rules are there, because it's the form, but the consciousness is most important. So if somebody gets distracted by the rules, then we say the rules aren't what's important, it's the consciousness. But if everyone understands that the consciousness is most important, then we can focus on the rules, how that's helping you in your consciousness. Therefore, when Prabhupada discusses, the rules and regulations, or varnashram, or anything that actually has a form, then it'll be from the point of how it must be done, and at the same time he'll say it's not important, this other thing is important. Right? Because it must be those who understand the consciousness is important, then you can get into rules. When the consciousness is not seen as important, then the rules are secondary. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like that. So this is important to understand in application. Otherwise, then what happens is we don't know what is what. Oh, the rules aren't so important because it's the devotion. Okay, but where is the devotion when you're in your car thinking about your bills driving to work? Where is it? And that's happening Monday to Friday. Basically, how many weeks do you get off here? Huh? 2 in a year. So that's 50 weeks. 50 weeks. So 50 times 5, that's 250 days of your life, that there's a good chance you're not thinking of Krishna or connected in any way, shape, or form. Does that make sense? So that's why then the Vedas give a form in which you can connect everything. Does this make sense? So the Pancharatra is the most direct because it's all connected with the deity and all connected with worship. And then the Vedic then takes up whatever is not covered by the Pancharatric. You know what I'm saying? The Pancharatra is you take a bath. The Vedic is going to deal with all the different cosmetics and everything else that's going on in that bathroom. You understand?
Yeah.
Like that. And the Bhagavat's going to be chant Hare Krishna. So if you're chanting Hare Krishna in the bathroom, then that's covered. You know, while you're in the bathroom, you're taking a bath, you can do the deity worship, then that's covered. Does that make sense? Then while you're using all the little, this and that in the bathroom, then that's covered by the Vedic. Does that make sense? So that's the idea, is that it's a natural expansion. All it is as you're moving farther away from the consciousness, the form is being given to evoke that consciousness. You know what I'm saying? Why is there a rule, you rinse your mouth this many times before you brush your teeth? Because otherwise you just get out and walk into the bathroom and just, do something. But this is then, you're following a Shastric rule. This is the way Krishna likes it. In other words, Krishna washes his mouth before he brushes his teeth, right? When you do puja, he'd do achman first. Then only you'll do dantadavana and all these other things, right? And then afterwards you do achman again. Because that's the way God does it. Right? So naturally, if we're devotees of God, we like to do, follow the culture that he follows. Therefore, we do the same thing. But otherwise, how do we know? Right? Does that make sense? People just get up, go to the bathroom, don't wash their mouth, put their toothbrush in that, and brush their teeth. That means all the smells of the bathroom, everything from last night is all on the tongue. And when you brush it, it goes into the stomach. Great for health. Like that. You think about it, you go, yuck. But therefore, that's why the rules are there. Oh, we don't care for the rules. So then, you care for yuck. That's what. You know what I'm saying? So that's the idea, is how to bring it to a standard. But the point is it's only of value when you understand his connection to Krishna. You don't understand the connection to Krishna, not so important. Right? It's more important to remember there's Krishna. But it's a better position to be following the rules and not be conscious of Krishna. Because all you have to do is add the consciousness, and it's very strong. Then, not understanding the rules, rejecting them, and not thinking of Krishna. Because what they do is intellectually pull out, well, what if you're thinking of Krishna and not following the rules? Yeah, it's possible. Possible for who? Who's doing it? Right? Why do we say you have to practice now Krishna consciousness? Right? The Hindus say, don't worry about it now. When you're old and you can't do anything else, you can't make money anymore or anything, then you become religious and start chanting. Right? We don't recommend that. Why? Because then a whole lifetime of materialism, then at the end of life you're going to remember your materialism. Like that. So you practice now. Does that make sense? In other words, it's just basically, it's the same thing. As they follow the rules and aren't conscious, then these are not following the rules and are not conscious. Because they're not conscious. Otherwise, if they were, they'd be conscious that these are Krishna's rules. This is how Krishna likes it. So that they can be so unconscious to not understand that and throw out something very valuable. In the same way as doing their material things, they're not conscious. Does that make sense? Right? Yeah. So that's the whole idea. Yeah, this seems to. Okay, is there any questions on all this?